Hi, my name is Jacob Sanchez, and I'll be talking about the culture of technology news, which is a thing I'm very passionate about. So I spend a lot of time online, and I'm obsessively checking news all the time. But I'm not going to be watching cable news or reading the newspaper. So a lot of my information will come from an online source, and not even just Google News, which has a broad overview of you know popular news from USA Today or the New York Times. Although I do like to check the New York Times, I like to have more of a tech focused. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about how I consume tech news. First, I'll go over what I do every week, and then more daily, and then finally, some real-time news, how I see what's breaking. This Week in Tech is what I check every week. It's a weekly show done by Leo Laporte, and it's really great because it hits the big stories, and he has great guests. So guests who know a lot about the inside of an industry, and they'll have interesting banter. And there's no call-in, so it's not really an interactive show. But he takes a look at the live chat, and you know it's a good weekly show about tech, and that's how I like to start. With at least knowing this much for the week.
Now the bad news, kids.
What?
Condé Nast laid off a bunch of people, and now I think, according to Valleywag, an esteemed source.
Oh, they're never wrong.
An esteemed source. Even Leander Kahaney got laid off.
So here's Twit. This is a weekly podcast that Leo Laporte does with other tech luminaries, such as Sarah Lane here. And he has a really nice setup. He uses microphones, switches. He comes from a broadcasting background, so what he does is pretty professional. Now, Buzz Out Loud is another podcast I listen to daily, and it's different than Twit in that it has a more current bent, and because of the length, it's only about 40 minutes instead of an hour and a half. You get a little bit more in depth in the stories and more interaction because there's more people commenting on stories and calling in, and they're taking emails and phone calls, so it's a little more interactive.
Today is Wednesday, April 22nd, 2009.
I'm Natalie Del Conte.
I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Nicole Lee.
And I'm Jason Howell.
Welcome to Buzz Out Loud, CNET's podcast of indeterminate length. This is episode 958. Happy Earth Day, everyone.
Okay, and as you can see, they have split screen. This is another pretty professionally done podcast every day about the top tech stories. So they have a studio. They do a lot of video. So this is Natalie Del Conte, who's in New York, in the New York studio, and the rest of them are in San Francisco. So they have a switcher, a TriCaster they use to switch to make it look really professional. They go through the top rundown of the stories, and then they take viewer or listener calls and emails for correction. So like if a story breaks and the next day, someone calls in with well, actually, you were wrong about that, they'll talk about that in the next episode. So it's a great way of, especially if you're not able to watch the video, just to listen to the audio podcast, you're able to get the tech stories without having to have a lug around your computer. You can just listen to it in the car or doing chores or anything like that. Okay, and Tech Meme is also daily, just about tech news. It just focuses on that. And the great thing about it is the way that it's just formatted. It'll have one big story, and then it has underneath the discussion all the people talking about that story. So here we see Amazon acquires Stanza, which is an ebook application for the iPhone. And it actually goes and has their blog by the people who create Stanza Lexical, and that Amazon acquired them. So everyone who's responding to this post comes under here under discussion. So you can see new items as they come out. This one came out a while ago. These are brand new items. So the longer an item has been up here, it'll have more related stories. and the bigger an item is too. So it's a good way of seeing, just tech news by itself, most important stories, and as you scroll down, more obscure stories and newer stories. This one was updated 20 minutes ago, but so far 3 people have responded to it. So it's a good way to keep up on the latest news, on the biggest news of the day. Okay, and the closest thing I have to a newspaper is Google Reader, which is set up through my Gmail account, and it's more like a newspaper, but it's better because you can choose what sections you really want to, cover. So over here I have all my RSS feeds, which is just a way of getting a website into an RSS feeder without having to go to the website. So instead of having to go to Lifehacker, 43 Folders, or Ars Technica, I can just, click here and read all the articles just as they would appear on the website. Some websites just give summaries, like the top stories and then a little blurb. So here I look at, news summaries from Dig and TechMeme. And so if for example, this one, the new MySpace CEO, I read the little blurb here, so I don't need to go to the actual site. And I can breeze through these pretty fast. If I wanted to, search or read a longer article from Ars Technica, I could come in here, read the rest of the article, scroll down to the next one, and if I don't have time, start an item and come back for it later. What I also love is that you can have your friends shared items, and you can share items yourself. So if I wanted to share this item about Firefox, I could say share with note, another shared item, and post to shared items. And so that's how I can keep up with news daily. Okay, and Twitter is more of a daily, almost hourly way to check on news to see what's happening right now. It's a good way to find instant news as it's breaking. You can see here, I check it about a few times a day, so I'll go and read through, see everyone's links. If they link to some other story that I want to check out, and if I don't have time, I can favorite it and come back and check it later. And you can see here there are trending topics on Twitter, such as the swine flu, Save Chuck, which is a show. And hashtags are really popular. That's what the pound sign is. So it's a pound sign, and then you can search for it. So you can see everyone who's posted about Save Chuck, about NBC, sign a petition, Save Chuck Day has ended. Okay. So Twitter can be used for a lot of things. One good person to follow is Tim O'Reilly, because he uses it in a interesting way. He does a lot of retweeting, right, which is RT, which is where you take a tweet or a news item and you just copy and paste it pretty much with attribution. So from this post from Radar, track swine flu across cities in real time. It's great, it's an interesting story. So he follows Radar and he, decides that that's a good post to show. So he has more retweets, and that's almost like what I think of as journalism is someone following a lot of other people, and then getting us the best information that they have. So I love tech news, and you see all the podcasts that are updating right now that I listen to every week or every day, and I listen to them in the car or when I'm walking, and it's a good way to keep up with things. But it's also almost an addiction starting thing, because once you start following news, you need to follow the most current news, and there's always tons of news coming out, and you want to be as caught up with the latest news possible. So that's my culture of tech news.